We are shows what you know. We'll always watch TV. And if you think we can't, we'll watch more and you'll see. That's why the people of the web believe in Jim from Las Vegas and Jacob from Sweden.
Welcome back to Maisel Men, your one and only podcast discussing the marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Yes, indeed, there is only one. Isn't it marvelous, though? And you only have to wait 2 or 3 months in between episodes as we dive right back in to discuss episodes 5 to 10 of Season 2 of the marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I am excited to get back into it. It has been a little while, but still very excited. Still a very great show. We're going to dive into it. My name is Jacob Burrows.
And I am Jim Scampoli. And yes, I mean, absence only makes the heart grow fonder. And I mean, what else are you going to do while we're killing time waiting for the latest season of Marvelous Mrs. Maisel?
Exactly. I will say we do have other television podcasts. Those do tend to get in the way, but you can find all of those at showswhatyouknowshow.com if you're interested. We discuss The Sopranos every week, slowly going through the whole show. We've gone halfway now, so you can find all of that at showswhatyouknow.com or just search for Cut to Black, a Sopranos sit-down on your podcatching app. But either way, this is not about The Sopranos. For once, it is about the marvelous Mrs. Maisel. But you're right, though. It is one of those shows where you watch it, and then it's like a year. Like, it's one of them shows, one of them streaming shows. You watch it, and then, then there's a hiatus. And I know that's the case with most television, but it's amplified when you get to enjoy all of it in one go. And the positive part is we now have the experience of reflecting back and what actually sticks out on reflection. Like, the good parts, are they better than we remembered? The bad parts, have they gone away, or are they amplified looking back? We're gonna get into all of that, but what's like your initial thought here going into the later half of season 2, Jim?
Well, actually, real quick before we get into that, I do want to read an email from Kristen on our discussion from season 2, episodes 1 through 5. Just starts out, says, Maiselman, I was glad to hear you guys had some holdups with these first episodes because I was worried that maybe I was being overcritical. I think it's because the first season set the bar so high it's easier to nitpick this go-around. As for Paris, I was pretty bored and confused by it at first, but I have a new hope/theory for it now that Abe caught Midge doing her set. Part of the reason Rose was felt disenfranchised was because Abe had kept something from her, right? I think they say that. So I'm hoping the payoff with Paris is that now Midge has put Abe back in a bad position where he may have to risk all they've rebuilt to keep a secret and not upset her mom. We'll see. For Ben, at first I thought they were implying he was gay. Is Ben gay? Ben gay. I get it. But seriously, I like the character. Hope he stays on. But I'm a bit worried since Zachary Levi has Shazam coming up. What if he gets too big after being in a Smash DC hit? Like you guys, I thought the record bit was going to lead into something, but I guess it was a funny stinger. I guess, yeah, that's when she's chasing down those record guys, maybe trying to get some royalties. I also love Chester a lot and love that his name's Chester. I love that they're constantly forgetting the kids everywhere. It's like child neglect of Mad Men, but more fun. Luigi TV seriously cracked me up. I've been a bit bummed that Midge isn't struggling more with stand-up. Other than the wedding, she just kind of nails everything in a very Rory Gilmore kind of way. And I really hope she doesn't turn into a late season Rory Gilmore, which I feel like this Rory Gilmore hate. I will not stand for it, but let me continue. Speaking of Gilmore Girls, the show overall is starting to feel much more like Gilmore Girls to me, which isn't a bad thing, just an observation. Last Snow is actually kind of a large gripe I had that could still be proven wrong, but why wouldn't anyone else recognize Midge at the Concord? Clearly, it's a crowd that knows the Catskills since they're loving her jokes about it, and it's in close proximity since Abe is there. What are the chances she'd be completely unrecognized there? Did everyone else go to the Tropical Night? Sorry for the long-windedness. Very happy to have you guys back. The more Maisels, the merrier. So it's good. She was actually in it at that point, like hadn't seen 6 through 10 with the comment. Yeah. So that's where we're at.
It is interesting. I assume you're still then, Kristen, bored and confused about Paris because that certainly never came up again. Yeah. It's an interesting point there about it was like Rose feeling disenfranchised, Abe keeping something from her, and she's out of the loop. But then towards the later half of this season, when that's going on, Rose is like kind of nonplussed mostly about the stand-up when it's finally revealed. She's like, what? I don't even understand. And
Yeah.
I mean, it is a great scene with Abe sort of, how could you hide this from us, having known for episodes at that point. But yeah, I assume you're still down on the Paris then. Kristen, what about you, Jim?
Yeah, a little bit. Although with where it went with Rose, like I was kind of satisfied at that point when
Yeah.
where it went with Abe and Rose's relationship. I feel like the big thing with this show, and to go back to your question about this back half of the season, I still, obviously it's a great show. I still love it a lot, but the balance, like, I guess I wasn't prepared that we were going to focus so much on Abe and Rose. I knew they would be important, but I thought it'd be more important to Midge, whereas that was clearly just kind of an arc for them for the most part. And I guess I didn't expect that, because I'm like, I think I even said in our first half discussion, like, I'm here for Midge and Susie, and I want them like against the world.
Yeah.
But the show's branching out a bit, and I guess to go with what Kristen's talking about, I think that is a kind of Gilmore Girls kind of way, where they kind of are more interested in some of the family drama over like the stand-up comedy stuff, which isn't a bad thing, but it feels like the balance tipped. And I don't know if I don't know if it's just us, but I think a lot of maybe other people that are into the show maybe didn't quite expect that either. Because especially as we started to get into Ben, I feel like Ben is very short changed here, I guess, because it is a shorter show. It's not like Gilmore Girls where you have 20 episodes to kind of spend some time doing some like quirky things here and there. Like, we get to a point where it's like a engagement is happening, and it feels so like out of nowhere to me.
Yeah.
And I get it as far as for the arc of what they're trying to do. I just don't feel like it's set up as well as it should be.
Yeah, well, we'll get into Ben, but because he was just in my view, when we were discussing the first episodes, he was just some guy, you know, but we'll get into Ben. But as far as the balance of the season, I think you're right. It's definitely branching out a lot. And I'd say, though, that looking back at it, all the stuff in the comedy that I was excited about, it is still there. It's just weird how it's sort of refocused a little bit. It's almost like a lot of the comedy is in the background rather than center stage, if you will. But that also kind of works. It's just, I think you have to go into this season kind of in the right mindset of like knowing it's going to have a more languid sort of pace where it's going a bit slower, not slower necessarily, but like you said, branching out, doing other stuff, because all the beats of the comedy storyline are still there. I mean, there are great moments. I think Kristen pointed out that she was a bit bummed that Midge isn't struggling more with stand-up. She just seems to kill it all the time, which I think is fair, but we do have some ups and downs. Like, the story is there, and it's almost like if it was a 6 or 8 episode season, I'm sure like those would be the beats that you kept, but all the other stuff at the same time, I mean, it is very confident and very like, okay, let's do this for 2 episodes type thing, which isn't always great. But if you expect that, like, just because it is so put together in such a brilliant way, all of it, I think it still works. But I see where you're coming from still.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of, they had a similar thing with the Gilmore Girls revival, which I thought was great. But knowing that it was, what were they, like 4 episodes? I mean, they were feature length, so they were longer, but we discussed that if you go back in our archives, and I remember there were times where I was like, yeah, I mean, this musical thing is cool, but I only get 4 episodes with Rory and Lorelai, so I don't want to spend time with this right now. Yeah. Whereas it's similar with Maisel. Like, if this was a longer show, I'd be fine with some of our like off-road fun that we have, which is still great. It's part of the quirkiness and part of the like the brilliance of the show. But sometimes it feels like some of the plot things get skipped over because we want to spend time in the Catskills making a lot of like insider jokes of like growing up there and what that was like. It's still fun to watch even without having with an outsider perspective, but it's like, all right, let's get to something else now.
Yes. Well, shall we get into some of the sort of details and beats of these 5 episodes?
Absolutely.
Great. So we start out with, of course, Abe had only just found out, and they're driving home, and there's a fun sequence where he's silently stomping around, which is essentially this whole episode for him. Like, in the shock that's come over him, it's not until the very end that it seems that, I mean, there is a great moment at the end of the episode where they're watching some comic and he asks, "Are you funnier than this guy?" And she goes, "Yes." But there's other great stuff in this episode. I mean, notably Susie walking back after this night, falling asleep in Midge's family's house there, and there's a search party going on. What did you feel about this?
I loved it. And actually, I'm looking at my notes, and again, like, I know it's been time since we've recorded our episode. I mean, it's also been time since I've seen these, but I have notes. I'm like, who's Pamela? Oh yeah, Pamela's the plunger, obviously. But I love that there's a search party. They're all concerned for her because Susie's such a curmudgeon and doesn't want to be there anyway. So it's kind of nice to see that maybe they're kind of breaking through her harsh exterior a little bit. Warmed my heart. And like, I kind of like how it plays through later on when they're all in their bunks and they love her, but then they're having their gossip. But then she even has to come in with her, like, they're talking about like their
that's never going to happen, right?
Yeah, none of that's going to happen. And it's such a Susie thing, and it's like heartbreaking but true and blunt and like right to the point. I really liked a lot of the stuff they're doing here with having Susie up at the Catskills.
Yeah, that kind of bummed me out after having this love fest of her getting back. And it is, I mean, the joke is as well that obviously she doesn't work there. She's just sort of shown up and tried to like blend in, but then she's just become such a fixture, and to a almost like parody level. It's very comedic. It's so much fun though, and it reminds me just of the level of reality we have in this show. It's not quite like actual reality. It's heightened. Everything is heightened, and like all the reviews state, like, this is 1959, I think, New York, but with all the rough edges polished off. Like, when Susie gets abducted by gangsters, it's like a fun little like thing. Yeah. It's very much like, a comedic hyper reality of what this place and world is like, and that's why we get to have these things and actually enjoy them, and it all balances out. I'd say this is basically like the last big episode at the Catskills. It does end with the big show there and everything, and it also gives another ending for Joel and Midge, where they have a dance and like say like, "Oh, we started this with a dance, let's finish it with a dance." But it's never over with these two, so it doesn't really matter.
Which I love, though, because I mean, if you go back to even our first season, I've always been a Joel apologist. Not to say he's not a piece of shit, and I understand like it's his fault. But it's like this weird greater good fault. Not like excusing anything he did, but like they're better off because of it. And they still do have this history. And I like that they're not just like, with a show like this, you could easily just keep him the villain. You know what I mean? You could easily just have him be the shitty ex-husband that cheated. But they kind of try to spend time to even show that he's changing and getting better. And they are playing with these will they, won't they. I feel like I'm in the minority that's rooting for them. But I feel like the showrunners in a weird way are on my side with the way things go. And they spend a lot of time in these episodes establishing not only that Midge, with Ben is kind of developing a relationship, but Joel is kind of becoming a ladies' man or branching out on his own as well. So they're trying to like show they're separated, but it's like they're on a collision course, man. There's nothing you could do about it. Just try to get in the way.
Okay. Well, I will. I mean, yes, he's kind of branching out like a little bit, Joel, but it's more clear that he's still like got feelings than that Midge has. Like, the thing Midge has with Ben is obviously bigger than anything that Joel is developing here with these various girls that show up in these episodes. But that's not surprising, because who are you going to find that's like Midge? No one. She's just marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
And I guess the thing for me, and maybe it's because I do kind of like Joel, is the show's setting up, and we're going to get more into it, like, that this Ben thing is serious, but I never bought it. Like, it never felt, it always felt shallow to me. But I mean, we'll discuss it.
Let's discuss it right now. Ben is a Mary Stu. Ben is a quirky, Ben is too quirky. Ben is way
Yeah.
too quirky. He is, manic pixie dream boy, almost. Now, I say this knowing full well that Amy Sherman-Palladino is going to turn me around. Like, start of next season, I'm going to be like, Ben has so many layers, because this is how I felt about Joel. I was saying, like, towards the end of the season 1, I'm sure I'm going to love Joel, even though I was hating Joel. And you're right, though. I felt exactly the same about Ben. They have fun, they hang out, but then in the last episode, it's suddenly like, yeah, well, of course I'm getting married, this guy. Like, wait, what? You are? Okay, maybe. And it's like you mentioned, it's out of the blue, but it's maybe also commentary on, it is the fucking 50s, man, at this point. Like, well, you could get married. We had sex, so now we get married. I don't know. And everything's going to be perfect again, and I'm going to be a housewife, but he loves comedy this time, so it's going to be grand. So that's probably part of it. But yes, the thing with Ben, there's a whole episode with this painting stuff, so that's their only chance to really build it up into a real relationship. Though there are bits I like with them as well. So, but staying in the... Oh, sorry, you go.
I was going to say real quick, and I guess they are, because, when we get into the painting stuff, the big theme, obviously, is like, you can't have it all. It's sacrifice for your art. Do you want to settle down and although you already have kids, so it's not like
no, it doesn't matter. She forgot about the kids when she said yes on the phone, much like in Mad Men.
Very true. Well, yeah, because it is coming to this whole choice of, do you want to have we've seen this theme in a lot of movies, TV shows. I feel like it's a bit overblown. Obviously, people can create art and still have a family, but it's a nice thing to play off of. And I guess Ben, it's like we're seeing the old Midge, because even like before season 1, I guess, because obviously the pilot, we see the domesticated Midge until she kind of breaks out and becomes a comedian. I guess this season we're spending a lot of time seeing the old Midge, or what, it's still a big part of her, being the kind of yuppie Jewish upper class lady that she is, that happens to be, have the gift of gab. So I guess that's what he represents. And I think you have a great point that I guess rushing into marriage wouldn't be a crazy thing in the 50s. It's not rushing in. It's like, well, you can't be divorced. This is a good guy. You like each other. Why not just get married? So that does kind of make a little bit more sense to me now when you put it in that perspective.
He's a doctor, Jim. Come on. But yeah, also, even stepping back to episode 6 here, Abe finds out about Midge and the stand-up comedy, but it's only just like in this very same episode, he also finds out about his son being a spook for the government, in a fun scene there when they're in this security room with the buzzer and all of that. Good stuff. It almost feels like he forgets about Midge. Like, he's only thinking about his son for the next couple episodes there when this is going on, and he gets kicked out of Bell Labs. He gets kicked out of the school. So given how the season starts with him and Rose getting things back on track, Paris and all of that, now it's suddenly like, no, Abe's crazy. Abe's going crazy because of all these things, and everything is falling apart. His work at Bell Labs, his schoolwork as well. He's getting kicked out of both of those, and it ends on a sort of like, we're going to take him to court, or like, I'm going to go back to my communist days, or I'm not even sure what's going on there. But it's a lot to worry about for poor old Abe here. He actually has a lot more emotionally speaking going on than Rose does. So I guess Rose kind of gets the start of the season. He gets the back half.
Yeah, he's kind of picking up almost what she felt last season, because there's all these secrets, things that he didn't know about, and then also the fact that he thinks he's helping his son, like, the established professor that he is, but it's like, nope, he's actually above you, and you're actually kind of very low level, that we only, like, it's almost, we're just kind of being polite to you in a weird way by ever, like, maintaining like your thoughts or your like his experiments, whatever the fuck he does. But yeah, it's quite a beat down for poor Abe. So it's not just dealing with Midge in doing stand-up comedy. It's just his whole life is kind of upside down.
Yes. And final note there on episode 6 is you mentioned the musical stuff and the Gilmore Girls Year in a Life revival thing. We do have a sequence here at the end of the Catskills where they always have this big show put on by the crew, and it's one of those things that if there were only 5 episodes of Maisel, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, I'd be like, fuck this scene, because it goes on for a while. And it's like, oh, Russia, England, and all these dances. But now, because we have 10 episodes, I'm actually like, well, this is rather delightful, actually. And it's sort of setting the tone of the season that, like, no, we're going to do these things because we want to. A lot of it is like, we want to do this, so we're gonna, which usually is shit. But when you do something well, it's not. It's actually great.
And it's fun payoff to see Susie in the talent show. I really like the moment when afterwards, when the comedian goes up and Abe asks her, are you as funny as him? And she takes a minute, but she says yes. Shows she has real confidence in what she does. And back to the Joel thing, I love that they're dancing, and I guess it's time we dance with someone else, and the camera pulls back and they kind of separate. A lot of great stuff. This show's very cinematic, and they make a lot of great choices like that with the camera movements and the sweeping shots and the musical. It's a great show.
Yes. So that does bring us into episode 7, which is the art episode, starting it with an like Instagram square image that then slowly expands as she's looking at these paintings and walking around in the art world of the 1950s. It feels like, much like they wanted to explore the Catskills in Paris, it's like, well, now we want to get into art. So fuck you, sit down and watch it. You're going to love it. And I did, to be fair.
Yeah.
But it is a kind of weird offshoot, right? What do you think?
Well, I think it is a nice parallel to the new Midge, like talking like the Catskills represents the old Midge that she grew up like the world she knew, and now it's like, even though Ben comes from that world, this is a little bit different. It's not quite stand-up comedy, but it's almost in that same realm. And her stumbling upon like a nice piece of art is like how she stumbles on stage and just kicks ass, because even this highly respected artist can see that she understands art, and they have that weird connection over it.
Oh, are you talking about Count Adamar from A Knight's Tale?
Is that?
Yes.
That is. Oh yeah, it is.
Yes. So yeah, she stumbles into like a side gallery at this big gallery, and she buys a painting just because it speaks to her. And this is Ben's world. He's all excited about this stuff and brings her in. And of course, like you mentioned, she just slides in, like makes friends with the big shots and everything. And like he's all amazed that she bought a painting because she liked it. And everyone else, they're just collectors. They don't really care. It doesn't really, affect them really. So he decides to invite her over. Ben thinks there's flirting going on, and there kind of is, but not really. And they get to she gets to see this amazing painting that's so great you can't show it, because if you show it you'd ruin it. But it's gotta be so thrilling that it's like beyond words, beyond description, bringing us into the discussion you mentioned of like, oh, you can't make something this great if you got a family. And I mean, like you said, the reaction should be, I do already. So I'm fine, actually. But, this is all about how she can't have it all.
And also, I mean, thinking about it now, too, because you're right. Like, Ben is almost this, like, manic pixie dream boy. But this does kind of show his limits, because he's kind of well-versed enough to kind of know about art, but he also doesn't know about art. He's like, the rich people that Banksy makes all his money off of, but he doesn't really respect those people. They're like all excited when Banksy shreds the painting, and they're like, well, now I want to buy the shreddings. Because it's just, I'm a rich guy and I can buy stuff and I can own it. But, in very Midge, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel fashion, she immediately adapts and picks up the situation on a much deeper level than he does.
Yes. And meanwhile, Joel is holding an office party like we discussed last time, I believe. I mean, he's slid into this factory and started taking control, and they got the loan and they bought the building, so they're having some champagne over that. He gets very drunk, and it's a pretty good scene there where he's very drunk and just talks about how it's been a year and why can't I be forgiven? Like, I'm almost coming over to your side, it's a sweet enough scene. But That's he's all alone there as well, just sleeping in the office that he bought. And as we know, he's going to get kicked out of there as well, just like he got thrown out of his family. Well, he threw himself out. But...
Well, and I like that because I mean, Yom Kippur is on the horizon, so it's coming up on the anniversary basically of the pilot when all the shit went down. And we do get to see the old Midge because we do have her back with her mom. And they're getting the brisket, or they're getting the tenderloin. I forget. They're getting something else because they got the rabbi. And
got the rabbi.
Like I said, that was like in these 15-second TV spots when they were advertising the show hard, like in November and December. They would show that scene, and all I can imagine is someone that doesn't know this show are like, "What? What is going on?"
Well, yeah, even knowing the show and loving the show, that kind of makes me cringe because. Like I mentioned, we're in this hyper reality. Things are heightened. Yes, I get it. But they go out of a store and shout it like they're in a show. Like even if they're excited about it, they should be like jumping and hugging each other. They don't. They like do it like haha, and there's no one outside. And I'm like, well, this is weird. And I suppose that's probably part of it. Like it's a weird thing to shout about in the street. But yeah,
they even comment on it. Doesn't like
they do. It makes
like,
makes it better when they walk away like, yeah, it's like that felt nice or whatever they say.
And then I mean, Joel, like they're playing up this Joel's just like banging all these chicks basically. He bought the building for the factory. He's doing well with the business, but he's got Mrs. Moskowitz is kind of looking out for him, trying to take care of him. And of course, with Yom Kippur coming up, and the big dinner with the rabbi, Susie calls. There's also a gig, so of course things are colliding for Midge.
Yeah, of course. I mean, she actually decides to tell everyone, right? I don't remember the exact impetus, or if she just decides because it's something about Abe.
She asks Abe to cover for her, like when they first start church and they're kind of just bickering because everyone's on a fast, so everyone's kind of cranky. But then he says, he's not like that's not what he's not gonna lie for her. And then she just decides to basically come clean at Yom Kippur dinner, and such like the Palladinos. This is their, bread and butter, dude. Family drama at a dinner and like things come to a head. It's so great. And it's like you got great moments because you have Moish is eating cereal, even though he told his like grandkid he can't eat and he wants to take the Dakota ring. You got the maid coming in with the food. They keep shoving her away. And it's such a great choice that it is almost this like David Chase anticlimax where even like everyone's kind of confused. They don't really, it's not this big blow up reaction that you quite expect when she kind of comes out and says she's a stand-up comedian. Plus she's being long-winded about it anyways in fashion.
Yeah, and you describing it had me remember then that Abe, like, she has this elaborate plan to get away to the Gaslight to do the gig, because it's an important gig because some booker is going to be there or something, so she has to get away even though they got the rabbi. But yeah, he says, like, because of Yom Kippur, I guess all their sins are cleansed, and he says, like, well, you're not going to blow a year's worth of sinning, like, in the first 2 hours or something, because he's clearly going to be sinning again, but I can't do it right now. Come on. And he said earlier, he made her promise not to tell anyone until he decided.
That's right.
And now he's like, oh yeah, just tell him then, fine. And I think she's a bit like blindsided by this because even though she obviously has been saying, I think all season, that she's going to tell people, it's still a difficult thing. So that's why she is being long-winded about it, but she eventually comes out and says it. But it is great, especially with all the crosstalk that they're always great at, like cutting into another character. They're all having different conversations at the same time about different stuff, but in the funniest way possible. And then the dinner's coming in, the rabbi's coming in, but nobody cares about the rabbi now that he's actually there. They just keep arguing, and then the rabbi's like, maybe I should go. And like Susie's like, I thought there would be food at this thing, and so on and so on, and everyone's starving because they haven't ate. So yeah, really smashing scene here.
Yes, and then even like when she's talking about being a comedian, and Moish is like, "Well, go ahead, tell us a joke." And anyone that would try to say that they're in comedy or something, there'd be some shitty person that's just like, "Well, go ahead, make me laugh." Like that's how it works. And of course, she's trying to explain like, well, I'm stream of consciousness and observation. Well, I don't know what that means. And she's trying to talk about her son being bullied, and then Rose is like, when did this happen? And it's it's not the ideal situation for a joke. Hilarious stuff. And we kind of gloss over it a bit, but also in this episode, Midge does decide to go up in Ben's apartment, so you can assume they consummate their relationship here. And also, we get to see Susie's family a bit as she's trying to really make a go and start this business. And then she has a nice scene with her sister. That's in this one, right? Yeah, where she gives her mom's car.
Which is her sister-in-law, right? I mean, the guy is her brother.
It might be. I forget the specifics.
Yeah. Sure. But yeah, so we do end with she does get off finally and do the actual show at the Gaslight and has some scotch with Susie afterwards to celebrate because it went well. The booker or whoever liked her. And they have a nice moment of her going like, you know what? I want to be big. I want to be like, I want to headline at the Copa or whatever she says. And reminiscing about a year ago and everything. So yeah. This is the same episode that earlier we have the realization that, you can't make something great without making sacrifices. She's getting closer to Ben. And we wrap it up with, I want to be big. I want to be the biggest one. And she has revealed it to her family. That's one of the hurdles she had to get past.
Yeah, and there's also a quick moment in that dinner scene where Astrid blurts out that she's pregnant. Astrid's a great, Amy Sherman-Palladino character too, because she's always trying so hard because she converted to be Jewish and she wants to make everyone like her. And things come to a head with Abe, and I'm spacing on Midge's brother's name.
Oh God, so am I. Hang on. Noah,
yes, yeah, because things come to a head on that as well, because they kind of glean what's going on from Astrid, right? Don't they get some information from her? Like that?
Yes,
kind of
because she's doing a fast all on her own in the previous episodes. So Rose goes to her and sort of asks some questions, and she accidentally says how she knows he has a gun or whatever, and Abe starts thinking that he kills people. I think that's next episode that they actually have a heart-to-heart on that, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, 8. We just did 7. Episode 8 is the tour episode. I mean, that's the big thing in this one. And we do have a lot of other side things as well. I mean, what do you think about the tour in general, Jim?
It's kind of standard fare. I mean, you have to see, even though I agree, with what Kristen was talking about, sometimes things are a little bit too easy for Midge, but I guess that's why she is the marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Like we've brought up a few times, she is basically a superhero. This is a superhero show. And she has come clean about her secret identity to her family. But we get some fun, the perils of the road. And it is kind of it's one of the only places to go. Because like you said, if they're at this moment in the last episode where she's ready to be big and let's take this thing up a notch, you have to kind of now break it down a bit and challenge Midge and make sure that she's really in it. Because there's she has to adjust to, not having her bags brought up. She's so clueless. She's even when are they gonna bring our bags up? She's like, no one's bringing bags. And it's these dirty hotels. She doesn't want to sleep in the beds. And of course she's dealing with Susie snoring, and the gigs are not great.
There's also about the whole balance thing. We have Imogen and her baby shower that she doesn't go to, which is just impressively poor planning. I mean, I guess this is from the woman who didn't tell Susie that going to the Catskills, now that's like a 3-month thing. We don't just go for a little bit. Come on. But yeah, they're actually talking. They're meeting up at the Stage Deli talking about the baby shower, and then she doesn't realize that she's not going to be there for the baby shower. I think even I was thinking when is the baby shower? What's going on? How is this working out? But yeah, it is nice as well to see Imogen at the Stage Deli, see some of those worlds intersect. I do love Imogen as well, as I've said before. But yeah, some trials and tribulations on the road. It's kind of, I think anyone who's been on the road, if it's a tour, doing music, or even just, I guess, a road trip with friends, it can, you can recognize some of these things. Like you said, kind of standard fare, but it's where you got to go.
And I mean, a lot of good moments for the Joel fans out there in this episode. Because isn't there even a moment where he kind of he doesn't tell off Susie, but he's showing his concern, that nothing bad better happen to her or stuff like that. Kind of talks a little tough, take care of her on the road.
Did you say he doesn't threaten her? Because
Oh, does he?
he actually says, "Yeah, if anything happens to Midge on this trip, I'm gonna fucking kill you." He
Oh,
says.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. There you go. Oh, and then what? Midge doesn't even know how to drive either, right?
Yeah, of course not.
Yeah. And then yeah, they're dealing with because I'm kind of skimming through it real quick. Yeah, no dressing room, scummy dudes, of course, on the road, which does
Getting
kind of
rashes in your face. Yeah.
oh yeah,
Susie gets a rash because she slept on the bed. I guess Midge was just standing there all day. But yeah, she has to call back home for the actual baby shower and do a little speech, which is like, why are you here at all then? Like, or not here? Why even call at this point? She really fucked up. Again, she doesn't actually really get to pay the price. I mean, it does end with her coming home and the mess is still there. As Rose points out, this isn't Zelda's mess to clean. You made this mess. You clean it up. But you don't really see the fallout that much. But then again, Imogen does have the baby and they love each other and they are good friends. So it all works out in the end anyway.
and yeah, I mean, and they do deal with guy trying to stiff him. What he locks Susie in a closet.
Yep.
Is it just that he's not paying for the gig? I forget the specifics.
Yes, they're not paying. I don't recall why exactly. They were late and no one was drinking. Like that was the whole point of having a stand up in that. But he just doesn't want to pay. So Midge calls Joel, who comes in like a big tough guy. Interesting that Ben doesn't get the phone call, right?
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, she doesn't turn to Ben on this.
So he shows up, knocks the guy. He just threatens him, I think.
No, he does punch.
Okay, does he?
Because
Okay.
he says, "Who are you? I'm her husband." Well, why the fuck don't you keep her? And then he punches him. And he says, "Whatever was going, it was better to end that sentence that way," or something like that.
Yeah.
Doesn't let him.
Yeah. You're right. Good stuff from him there.
It's tough. It's like I could see that someone could maybe argue that it's too like damsel here, where like he has to come in and save the day. But it's not so much too much of a comment on Susie. It's just that she's still new to this as well, and she's trying to handle what she can. Aren't they like recording the gigs or something as well? Like that's the whole thing.
Yes, that is a whole thing, and I think it starts like playing during one of the things. It starts playing it. Oh, and she's recording Susie snoring. I don't remember if there was any actual payoff to all of this with the recording, but yeah, they definitely do that.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's the tour stuff. It's kind of standard. It is nice to see a little hardship here because I feel like sometimes the comedy is a little too easy. Like I kind of point out in the past when she kills at that gig when Abe's there, but I feel like you made a good defense on why that has to happen, and it does make sense in the end. But it's good to see that sometimes if it's too easy, it would feel like that Midge would give up at the smallest sign of things not going well. So it's good to see her hang in there.
Yes. So we get to episode 9. Might be my favorite episode. It's a really strong one. It's the one with the telethon. Yeah. And even though the other episodes, especially the tour one, they're very sort of inwardly consistent, it feels like you can tell which episode each episode is because I can say it's the art episode or the tour episode. But this one, more than any, has one through line and one build up and one climax. Like it all comes together, and even from the start, it all is so great. Starting with this comedy of Susie trying to get Midge into this slot by asking various people, going to all these different tables, and the way it's all cut and put together is so funny, and the way it's written, because she's asking the wrong person, and then the girl left, and then she's gets the wrong information, and this guy who keeps shouting, "I don't work for you," but then it all works out, and I don't know, that scene is... Like, if you just showed me that, I believe I would be sold on the whole show, having no other context at all, just for how they put it together.
Yeah. It's like this whole network of entertainers. They're all in this one diner in New York, and you got to play the diner politics, and it comes together in a hilarious way.
Yeah. And as far as their family, like, I think anyone doing anything creative can relate to the fact of like, oh yeah, I'm a graphic designer, or I'm an author, or I'm a filmmaker. But then suddenly it's like, I'm going to be on TV tomorrow. Like, and she gets to say that to her family, and they have to face, like, they don't really at first, but towards the end they have to face the fact that this is a real thing. I think that's what they say. Oh, so this is really happening, as they're watching the show live through a window, watching other people watch their daughter and laugh.
Yeah, and I'm kind of skimming through it here because then we have like Abe's kind of has his outburst here, right? He basically kicks out, like, well, first he's not getting information in his like private lab with his coworkers, and he's starting to realize it's all kind of just set up. I don't know, maybe it's a favor to Noah or whatever. They're trying to placate him in a weird way, and that seeps out into his frustration in his class, and he just kind of kicks everyone out.
Yeah, because I think people are missing from class. I guess he hasn't been showing up because he's been having a mental breakdown and working more at Bell Labs, and they don't want him there. And I guess his favorite student transferred, and he asks, "Why are you all here?" This is a great contrast to the earlier scene when he's like walking along, and when Rose was at the school as well, and everyone, like, the class was following him, intent on every word, and they kind of still are. But he just tells them they're all useless and incompetent, and that does lead to him later having a meeting with the dean or whoever he is. I think this is where we get to, like, I could threaten to stab you with this cheese knife or whatever it is. Good stuff.
And then everything seems like, once they arrive at the telethon, everything seems good. It's like she's got a good spot. They're setting up the lighting. They're busting into the control room where everyone's freaking out. But then, what is Jane Lynch's character's name? I'm spacing on her name now. Now, like,
Sophie Lennon.
Sophie Lennon, yes. Because now it's interesting because that was like such a big part of the beginning of the season. Because even like Susie being blackballed, or them both being blackballed, kidnapped by gangsters, what have you, kind of went away for a little bit. But now the shadow of Sophie Lennon is back, as she's kind of bumping Midge and kind of putting her out here at the telethon.
Yes, which I mean, there's so many great parts here. We have, for example, them going into the control room over and over and getting shouted at, like, "Get them out of here!" And but they're just confident and like, "Oh no, we're definitely becoming great friends with these are the people you need to become friends with." Just yell at them every time. But then at the end, when they're leaving, they're all like, "Okay, bye, Mitch. Oh, see you, Susie. Oh, she did great," and so on. That's all great. And Sophie Lennon, of course, on stage doing her bit. Everyone's loving it, and doing her interview with people suffering from the illness that they're actually telethoning for. All good stuff. We also get introduced to this new character who's a singer, who's, supposedly very, very famous, big, important singer, who Midge, of course, happens to meet in the ladies' room, hits it off with immediately, like she does with most people. And that might pan out into something.
Oh yeah, was it Shy Baldwin, I believe?
Yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And it's even he's kind of like, yeah, Sophie Lennon's bullshit. You're Midge Maisel. You're the best.
Exactly. Yeah, so I love this episode. Like I said, we also have, speaking of Abe, he gets to sit down with his son, find out that they're pulling the plug on the whole project that he's doing, basically because of Midge. And this was something that's been kind of building since season 1, that, it was going to be a problem that she was being arrested. Would he be able to get the job? But it all worked out in the end. But now it's back because when she was in DC, she said something about Abe's project on stage.
Oh,
listening to kids' records and that. So it is her fault, actually. I don't think she knows that at the end of the season, but yeah, it's her fault actually this time.
And that's the one where like the kitchen burnt down or something, but it's like they burnt down the kitchen because she mentioned there's really this like deep-seated like CIA Big Brother going on here in the background.
I didn't read it that way at all. I read it as like, because in that scene, Noah's like, "Oh yeah, she did that," and then the kitchen caught on fire, and he's like, "Midge burned down the kitchen?" And he's like, "No." I'm like, I don't think so.
And then, there is a moment, too, where Benjamin runs into Midge at the park and kind of meets her son, right? And that kind of becomes the thing because, now it's like Joel replacement here, stepping in as a new daddy. I mean, he is
exactly. Right. Right. So, let's see. I think we'll move on then to the... She does kill it, obviously, at the end. She kills it, she improvises, goes to all the phones. It is fun. If something that takes place in the 50s is actually funny, it must have blown people's minds, because when you look at comedy from that age, it's not what we would find funny today. Again, it's a hyper reality. It's all enhanced. It's not realistic, but it's so great when she's walking around answering all the phones, and you just see all of her friends, and even the guy who's always a sourpuss at the gaslight. He's sitting there laughing like, I'll be damned. Like, it's one of us up there on the screen, and I feel the same way.
Doesn't she get political? Because isn't that kind of a thing throughout it, where it's like, make sure you're not like this or that, but she
Vote Kennedy. Yes,
Yeah.
she goes, vote for Kennedy, because she's hypnotizing the audience. But even in the control room, they're like, oh, she can't do that. Oh, ballsy. I like it.
But I feel, on another show, that would be a thing. And I mean, I assume maybe it still could be a thing, whether it affects Noah or Abe somewhat. It just feels like such a thing that shouldn't just be left there, but we'll see.
Yeah, I feel like in this show it would be just left, but then maybe at the end of season 3, Noah's going to lose his job in the CIA as well. Who knows?
And then, we do have Moish sits down with Joel and fires him in this episode, I believe. Or is that the finale? No, I think that's this one.
Yeah, that's that one.
Yeah, but it's like it's the good old, like, you're too good for this firing, right? It's kind of like, I don't want to hold you back. I'm holding you back, my good son. You're coming in, you're doing so good, but you're on to bigger and better things. So we'll see what that leads to.
So we've already discussed a lot of the stuff that sort of goes down here in the final episode as we get into it. But we do get a flashback with Blonde Midge and the actual original proposal. Like we mentioned, it's all about Ben, and now Ben wants to marry her, but then he's got to get permission from the dad, and Abe is withholding it for a long time. By the time he agrees, she's kind of changed her mind, because she gets this offer to go on a whirlwind tour of everywhere with Shy opening for him, because he just happens to have comics opening for him. I didn't like, this is another one of those things that in another show I'd be like, oh yeah, that's fucking convenient, isn't it?
Yeah.
But for me, I'm just like, yeah, no, this actually makes sense in this world, because she has a superpower, and I do believe in that superpower of comedy.
I'm just kind of going through my notes here. Yeah, because I remember when I was first watching, I was like, wait a minute, what? Like, he's asking for her hand in marriage, but kind of talking it out here, I'm warmed up to it quite a bit. And it does make sense, I guess, in the time frame.
Yeah, I would say it does make sense, but I still feel the same thing you do talking about Ben. I'm not like, I think it's difficult to be Team Ben, because he is a pretty face and he is quirky. We haven't seen that much more to him, really, it feels like. But then he's a promising character still at the same time. We'll see if he shows up again, or if the whole point of him was just to have someone she could throw away for her career again.
Well, and then Sophie kind of makes a move on Susie in this episode, right? She kind of approaches her or summons her to her place or what have you.
Yes, because we have the whole thing in the previous episode where Susie goes and tells her off very sternly, which it's a classic thing of like, you got balls, kid. I want someone who's fighting for me in my corner, like you're fighting for her. So she tries to sign, like she wants Susie to be her manager, which Susie does keep a secret throughout the episode here. I mean, obviously, it's like Susie doesn't have any money. This would be a huge amount of money, because Sophie Lennon actually gets gigs and a huge prestige thing. I mean, it would be wonderful in every way imaginable, except for the fact that Midge and Sophie Lennon don't really get along. So it's a recipe for drama for sure.
Yes, yeah. And then there's this scene where like Joel comes to the conclusion that maybe he's going to open up a club, like a comedy club, and they're hitting balls. And the whole time I'm just thinking, like, are these CGI balls? How are they not hitting them right into the camera? What's going on? How are they? They're like, smashing them like left and right. Camera moves behind him, like moves around to the front of him.
I was just thinking about the timing. Like they're shooting them off at the same time. It's all one shot, I think, more or less, and the camera's moving around. They're really firing him off. It's like such a great like choice to like have that rhythm to it, and then they have a beer, and then they shoot more balls. But yeah, I was barely paying attention to what they said because it was so thrilling visually.
Yeah, I'm there. And then we get back to the control room, but Abe is like kick-ass in this scene where he's kind of taking control back.
All right, you mean like in the secure room in Bell Labs where they're
Yeah.
like telling him what's what, and then he tells them what's what.
And he sticks up for Midge. But I had the line right here. He goes, "She's a comedian. She humiliates her family on stage. That's their job."
Yeah, and they tell him to leave, and he's about to. Yeah, he does the whole speech. But yeah, and I think he just says like basically tells him to take your best shot. That's why he meets up with like a lawyer later, and like he tells Rose, I think that I don't know, he's quitting his job, I think, at the school, even though he has tenure, which is a silly thing to do because he could just keep getting a paycheck. But he's like, no, that would be, I don't know, dishonorable or something. He's really broken down by this whole thing, especially when Midge when he finally gives his permission. Midge goes like, "Ooh, actually, this Ben guy, I'm not sure," and it's like, geez, every time, Midge.
Yeah, and again, because it's going to be about how it affects the family, and especially how Rose is going to react, because this has been her wish, is because what she knows for happiness and I guess your role as a woman is to be married to a doctor and take care of your children. She's fine. She's going to be a stand-up comedian, but at least have a husband.
Yeah, and as Rose points out, the school owns this apartment. So like, what's gonna happen now? Are we gonna go live with Midge and Benjamin? And then he just has to take some books off a chair and tell her to sit down, because now he has to tell her that that's not happening either. There is also a small story going on here with Lenny Bruce, because he meets up with Midge drinking and says he's got this chance to do something. I think it's on TV. Right?
I believe so. Yeah, he's down in the dumps. She's giving him the moral support that he's at the end of his rope, basically.
Yeah. And he gets to go do this song about. I mean, he does some fine comedy and sings about being all alone, and I mean, it's thematically tying it all together with what's going on. We even intercut it. It's a montage basically of him singing about how he's going to be all alone, and it kind of hits Midge. She goes over to Joel at the factory, says she doesn't want to be all alone, at least not for tonight, but just for tonight. Tonight.
And what a great ending. I think it's a great ending because, I stan Midge and Joel. What would it be? Mole? Jidge?
We have discussed this before, and I don't remember what we concluded, so I'm not sure, to be honest.
Because, I mean, I'm not... it'd be Bidge for Ben and Midge. I'm not really... or men.
I only know Smidge. I only know Smidge, which is Susie and Midge. So I'm not familiar with these other ones. And I should have done the old go see what fanfic is more popular thing, which we do sometimes. Kind of check which ones are actually getting people to write fanfics. But I believe it's still going to be Smidge mainly. But Joel is clearly going to be more popular than Ben. It's just I don't think you're that much in the minority. But I guess I don't know for sure. So we did have another email from Kristen when she did finish the season, saying, well, first, important, Jane Lynch rules. The scene between her and the people with arthritis was the funniest part of the season to me, especially when she pretends to cry. Happy to see more of her if it pans out. And then her less mediocre thought, she says, or more mediocre thoughts. I didn't hate the ending, but I also didn't like it. Circling back to my thoughts on the first 5 episodes, it feels like a very Rory Gilmore decision for Midge to make, and I didn't like it. You would disagree with that, I suppose.
Yeah, I think I would disagree with that. Because, I mean, going back to it here, it's because she sees this moment with Lenny Bruce. And again, I apologize because I did forget all of this, and I just kind of skimmed through it as we were discussing it. And Lenny Bruce has this great performance. She helps him get on TV, but she sees that it's not like it made him happier. Like he still kind of has this moment of like, I don't know, I guess, what is it when you want to be you're chasing the dragon as an entertainer, and it's
Sure.
I don't know if you've ever had like, whether it be a performance or a recital, whatever it might be, your big show you've been planning for and setting up, and then you finally perform, and then it's like 10 minutes later you're just back in regular life, and it's like, where's this adrenaline go, or was it all worth it? Post-show blues, I believe they call it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I feel like it makes more sense. She wouldn't be going to Ben in this situation. She goes to Joel, and that's where it goes. That's not a Rory Gilmore thing. That's just a normal person thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if my first thought was probably like, well, why didn't she go to Ben? But she just decided not to marry Ben. It would be kind of dishonest to go and like, hey, by the way, we're not getting married, but like, I don't want to be alone, and you like me, right? So I mean, that's not what it's about. At the same time, she is cheating on Ben. Like, she didn't go and break up with Ben first, so that does kind of feel a bit Rory Gilmore in a way.
Well, it's fair, but yeah, I guess it is that, but it's also because the Ben thing was never real.
I know, but they tried to make us think it was real, but then they just discarded it.
I feel like her getting engaged to Ben is more of a Rory Gilmore move than her going to Joel. You know what I mean? Like, if we're going to go that route.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope
you've watched the Gilmore Girls, dear listener. I hope you watched Gilmore Girls. It's a good show. But yeah, it is. Yeah, I see what you mean. The engagement thing is very much like, okay, yeah, I'm definitely doing this right away, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be my life now. But this is, I mean, at least it's the way she describes it is like, okay, this is just for tonight, and I just know that I'm leaving this behind, and I'm leaving a lot of things behind, and I feel empty right now, and I don't want to.
Yeah. Well, what was it in season 1? They had their night together too. So was it like
but they were going to get back together at that point as well.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right.
Before he saw the gig and that. So yeah, where do you think season 3 will bring us? It's something we discussed from the very start, the fact that they got greenlit for multiple seasons at the same time, which is unusual. So I think that's also part of why they set the pace the way they did. They knew that this wasn't going to be their last season. They're probably already were probably already working on the writing of season 3 at the same time. So they could take this time to explore different stuff. Where do you think we're going in season 3?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because, I mean, especially dropping the details of like Abe talking about their apartments paid for by the school, leaving his job, potentially, meeting with a lawyer. I don't know what that entails. Like, are we going to see the takedown of the because no, they're not the Maisels. What is Midge's maiden name?
Abe. What is it? I don't even remember. Jesus.
I don't, because she still goes by the Maisel moniker even though she's separated. So I was trying to see the, god damn it.
Weissman. It's Weissman.
Weissman, yes. That was on the tip of my tongue. All right, yeah. So, I mean, are we going to see the drop down of the Weissman as far as class is concerned? Or are they going to have to deal with living with a Italian family and watching Luigi TV or whatever? Like a little taste of that?
Interestingly, that was basically at the start of this season with them going to live in like the French hovel of an apartment. So I feel like they probably won't do that. I don't know where Abe is going with all of this.
But that was more, I mean, I feel, to be fair, I don't think that's where they're going to go, but I don't feel like the French thing, that's like a rich person pretending they're going without. Like that's such a tourist version of, because you're living in France and you're kind of living it up, doing whatever you want. It's not quite the same as like, being poor. But yeah, sure. I don't know. I feel like, because going over it here, Midge's whole thing is that she's not gonna have 3 before 30. She can't go back to Jello molds. She didn't even think about it, and she accepted the tour. So she's feeling selfish for that because she's going against what she thinks her role is supposed to be. And then she turns to Joel. I feel like this will they won't they is going to continue. And Joel's the right man. I feel like Joel's going to open up a kick-ass club. It's going to have Midge performing there all the time, kicking some ass. I mean, again, I'm all about Susie and Midge more than anything. Like I don't, even though like, yeah, I'm saying I'm a Joel supporter, but I'm more about seeing Susie and Midge versus the world. And it does feel like they're setting up a big disconnect, and it would make sense that season 3 is going to deal with them more at odds, I would imagine. Because you can't blame Susie for taking a job with Sophie and trying to become more of a high profile manager, because she doesn't live the life that Midge leads as far as, money and privilege and all that. She deserves it. She's a hard worker. She believes in what she's doing. So it feels like the natural thing here would be the disconnect between them and kind of exploring that and how they work without each other maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think, managers in comedy or any sort of entertainment, they never have one client, because that's not how it works. And she's had one client for a long time. She gets a chance to bag a very great client. Is she maybe even I think she is going to accept it and get to a point where she's like this is going to be exciting. Her going from being like Luigi TV, hiding with the Weissmans in their house while they're away. Like, she's gonna go from that to having her own office. She's gonna have her own management company. I think that's gonna be fun. She's gonna have not just a phone number, but someone to answer the phone, and a phone bill that she can pay as well. So that's all exciting stuff. She's gonna disconnect from like, the reason we got started with this, I'm losing track, and then her and Midge are gonna make up towards the end and kick ass. And I don't know, maybe Sophie Lennon becomes a more sympathetic character, or maybe she becomes more of a villain. I mean, they could even become friends at one point, or maybe she gets to do her real parts that she actually wants to do. Like she mentions, like, I have a fucking degree in this and that, and I want to do this, but I can't because I have to do what people want. Maybe Susie will help her with that and she'll become a better person. Who knows? I
feel like she's definitely she would become more of a sympathetic character, because even though, she's kind of painted as a hack doing a character, it's in the, the guise of like, that's what she had to do as a woman coming up before Midge and kind of opening doors for her in a way. So I don't feel like they're going to let that go. And then, and especially with Midge, if Midge is going to be on tour 6 months, 6 months with Shy Brown or whatever his name is, I don't think Susie's going to be there. So that does give them time apart where they do just naturally, organically grow apart, rather than this like main blow up type deal. Where if we kind of I assume it would cut back to it's the end of the tour. Maybe we'll see a little bit of Midge on tour before she comes back. And then it's kind of dealing with the outcomes of that.
Yeah, it's I want to guess how it's going to start, but based on this season, I'm not going to guess it correctly. I think they're going to do something you don't expect, but it does sound like, seems likely they would, have maybe a montage and then her getting back and how everything's different, and maybe getting back and like walking into Susie's office that she has now would be a weird way to reintroduce them to each other and how their relationship is going to work. Now that she has maybe she got 3 more clients or 10 more clients. I don't know. That could be an interesting way to sort of pull the rug out from under you. I think she is going to obviously keep growing and getting bigger. I mean, she has a superpower. She really can't fuck it up, even though when she should. I hope she bombs a few more times. I'm excited, and I think it's going to come relatively soon, because they got the order to create the seasons at the same time. They've planned it out. I think it's likely we'll get it at the end of this year, that is 2019. And at that point, please do check your podcatching apps, because we'll be there. We'll be talking about it. We are the Maisel Men.
Absolutely. And I mean, I saw, this is a slightly off topic, but I mean, in discussion of the Joel character, and there's been talk of Amy Sherman-Palladino's toxic relationships or toxic male characters, and they're saying how Joel's a big one, and they were saying how Luke from Gilmore Girls is a big one. And
Luke, I thought you were gonna say Jess. Jeez. Okay.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a bit much, and I understand now. There's more of a like, the trope of the pining guy is a little bit creepier now when you think about it or try to really analyze it. But I don't buy it. I'm not buying it with Luke. I don't think Luke's a toxic character. Now getting to Gilmore Girls, I mean, there's definitely some issues with April there. If you want to really get into it, I understand that. But come on, toxic character, get out of my face.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was blindsided by that. Luke, he's a sweetheart.
Yeah.
And you know, you have characters in shows and real life who are pining guys who are absolute creeps, and he's not one of them. He's just a good guy and a great friend, and no spoilers for Gilmore Girls, so I won't say anything more. Just watch Gilmore Girls, all right? If you haven't, you probably have time to rewatch it until next season. But yes, we do discuss other television shows at showswhatyouknow.com, like I mentioned. You can also leave a review for Maiselmen on iTunes. We'd very much appreciate it, and we'll read it out next time. And, of course, if you want more from Jim in the meantime, there's jimandthem.com. For me, it's awesomepedia.org. Find our other podcasts and projects there. Anything else, Jim?
There's just one more thing left to say.
Oh, what's that?
We got the rabbi!